I got to ask you a question, and this is back to Charley Pride, because we've talked about him, but we've I wonder about your feelings, because it's like looking back at records, monumental records. You played on one of the most, at least in the steel guitar world, everybody hails that as like one of the cornerstones for traditional steel. It's the Live at Panther Hall album with Charley Pride. I mean, tell us about that. I mean, was it on a multi-track recorder? I mean, how, just everything you can think of about that.
No, there's a whole, I could write a book about that
Yeah.
album, Paul, because that's, first I'll preface it by saying that's my favorite album I ever recorded. It's not the best album, but it's my favorite album because it has so many wonderful, vivid, colorful memories. For instance, it was done in July 1968, and I was leader on the sessions, and so we took a contingent of Nashville musicians to Dallas, to Fort Worth, which is part of Dallas, next door. And we flew into Dallas, and we had Chip Young on rhythm guitar. We had Jerry Kerrigan, the great drummer, on drums, and the late Junior Husky, the great Junior Husky, on bass. And David Briggs was the keyboard player, and I had Wally Cochran at RCA called the Dallas local, and they sent us a guitar player named Johnny Patterson.
Wow.
And he used to play with Bob Wills, and he never gets the credit due him, because he did exactly what we needed on that album. So we have the musician contingent. Now, what had happened when we landed in Dallas, I got off the plane and I looked, and everybody was walking around the airport with this beer in their hand. And I asked somebody, what is that? It was Coors beer. Now, it turns out that was the first day it was legal to be sold in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
And everybody was drinking Coors. I went up to the bar and ordered me a Coors. And to this day, the only beer, if I drink a beer, I drink Coors if I can get it, real Coors. Not light. That's
the real stuff.
Those slim people can drink the real Coors. But anyway, I'm not much of a drinker, don't get me wrong, but still, that just set the stage for what was going to happen. Well, our two recording engineers were Al Pachuki, my favorite engineer. He was Elvis Presley's engineer, and Charley Pride's, and so many other artists at RCA, and a guy named Tom Pick, who became one of the great engineers too. So we had two recording engineers, and RCA flew a three-track recording machine. Three-track machine.
Oh my God.
So they needed two engineers, about like they needed an extra hand.
Yeah.
But Tom Pick's job was to sit, and they were positioned behind the stage. Nobody could see them. And his job was to, if we made a false start or something, was to roll the tape back with his finger. Oh. So everything was, manual and primitive. And this little three-track machine, the little small board that Al Pachuki was mixing from, the album's recorded in monaural, but he split the musicians. No, it was recorded in stereo, but the musicians are monaurally recorded. And he took and put half the musicians on the left side in one channel and the rest on the other side, and kind of split the reverb and made it sound, gave it the illusion of stereo. And Charley Pride had one track, so that was a stereo, the real stereo. And the third track was left open for Charley to overdub later, which he never did, if he needed to do it. And so I had done all the chord charts for all the musicians in Nashville. We're ready to do this. And unfortunately, the people in the audience, I don't think they knew it was an album. They had come to see a show. There were 2,500 people there. I was told it was full. Panther Hall would seat around 22 to 2,500 people. And but Jack Clement, the producer, now Coors beer was permeating the arena. Everybody got Coors beer, and they're drinking more of it backstage in the recording arena than was going on out front. And Jack Clement, the producer, was tapped into the sound system, so if he pushed a button back there, it cut our music out immediately, and all you heard was this disembodied voice coming over the sound system. And he started, in the first song, he pushed the button and said, Charlie, tell the friends and neighbors they need to be a little quieter, Charlie. We're trying to make a record here. And so that was for openers, and a little later we started the song again. and the button's pushed again, and the music is cut out, and this voice comes over. Charlie, the word is A, not ah. And, and you can start hearing the rumbling in the audience now, and so things are getting kind of contentious. And at that point, I just looked around at all the guys. I said, "Look, you guys can do what you want. Here's what I'm going to do." And I'm throwing my charts, and I threw my charts in the audience. And I had a friend there that I just met that night who lives in Kentucky, and I said, "Would you go get me 2 Coors beers?" And he got me 2 Coors, and I set them right beside my steel, and I sipped on them the entire. We played an 1.5-hour show. Probably were out there for 2.5 hours, and from that point on, it was just fly by the seat of your pants. And had I not done that, I think that album would have just been another stereotypical live album. But it became almost like we were let out of a cage. You know, we were caged animals, man. We've been in the studio for so long, and we were back into the element we grew up in, all of us, in the clubs and bars. We all played.
Yeah.
You did, I did, everybody did. And it was that wonderful freedom of spirit, freedom of feeling. All the musicians were real good, so don't have to look over my shoulder at anybody. I mean, of course, Junior Husky, they kind of got lost in a few places, and you'd hear the swells on the steel trying to get them back in the right chord. I mean, Junior, but basically everybody was, on their game, and Junior was too, except for getting lost a couple times, I think. But the music was just had that spontaneity and that magical. And when we got through a take, man, I didn't have to. I mean, I couldn't redo anything anyhow. But it was just one of those moments of you've been in that feeling of many times the good players have and the best players, and you get into that zone of boy, it's just magical. And that was one of those nights. And so we got through the album, and I'm told, Jack Clement told me before he passed away that there was another album in the can that was equally as good, that was never released. We had over an hour of music that was good, usable music, and he said, I only used what I could. That's all they would allow was about 29 or 30 minutes of music. And he said, but there's another album available as good as that. And I've never heard it. But
wouldn't that be great if they'd release that?
Sony owns these tapes, and they were found about 3 years ago by someone in their vaults who worked for Sony, or for BMG when they owned it before Sony. And so the tapes did exist. They found the 1.5 hours of unmixed tapes there of the recording. Wow. Now, so we got through with the album, and we're all backstage except Charley Pride. He's out front signing autographs, and he didn't know this story. And he and we recounted our perspectives of it recently on another show that for American Masters that he will be shown in the year 2019.
Oh, that's
on
great.
PBS. And I went backstage, and everybody's really drinking probably a little more than they should, including the engineers. And suddenly I looked up, and there were 2 big, tall Texans kind of weaving down the back of the stage. And they looked angry, and they were big guys, about 6'5" each, with cowboy boots on, cowboy hat, and long coats. And they got up to us, and one of them said, "Who's the SOB who kept messing up Charlie's show?" And we paid good money to get in here. And Jack Clement got up, and he wasn't a little guy, but he had to look up to these guys. He said, "Well, who wants to know?" And this guy said, one of the Texans said, "I do. By golly, we paid good money to get in here." And Jack Clement said, "How much do you guys pay?" And this guy said, "We paid good money, $5 a piece to get in." That's how much it cost us in 1968 to see a show.
That's hard to imagine today.
$5 a piece, and Jack Clement pulled a $20 bill out of his pocket and said, "Well, here's $20 to leave." And now that was a mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Now this guy was fixing to hit him.
Yeah.
You could see the reflex. And Al Pachuki, our engineer, was an ex-fighter.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's a Golden Gloves boxer, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was he had a short fuse.
Yeah.
He knocked one of the background singers out in the studio one day while we were recording it,
Oh my.
and they had to take him away to the hospital, and we kept recording with 3 background singers. Background singers. Honestly, this happened.
No, I believe.
So Pachuki, he sees this guy was fixing to happen. I'm standing to the right of him, and he starts to draw back to hit this guy before he can hit Jack Clement. But standing right behind him was Wally Cochran, the promotion man for all the RCA records, who always had this beautiful pinstripe, elegant-looking suit on.
Yeah.
Only one with a suit in the whole building probably that night. And he saw what was fixing to happen, and he knew Pachuki, and he grabbed Pachuki around from the back, around the waist, and tried to keep his arms down. All this happened, in a few split seconds. I'm making it sound like a long, drawn-out thing, but all this happened probably within 5 or 6 seconds. But it's all slow motion in my mind. And when he grabbed Pachuki around the back, Pachuki didn't know who had grabbed him. So his instinct, he hit Wally Cochran in the stomach with his elbow, knocked him cold on the floor. And he couldn't breathe. He was writhing around in this beautiful, expensive suit on this dirty concrete floor in Panther Hall backstage. And suddenly there were cops appeared from everywhere, Dallas policemen.
Yeah.
And each one of them grabbed each one of us by the arm, forcefully too. And somebody who took charge, one of the cops said, "Nobody moves till we get this straightened out." And I looked up, this guy had me by the right arm. He looked like he was 6'7".
Oh, man.
And they were tough guys, Texas policemen. And so I thought, my mind's flashing, I thought, oh my God, we came down here to do an album. We're gonna all go to jail. They're gonna throw us in jail. This is terrible. But somehow it got straightened out. None of us went to jail, but
oh my God!
You can only wonder. You don't have to wonder why it's my favorite album, because it has such a colorful, all this stuff swirling around, and yet we still cut that wonderful album. Yeah,
well, that album is so real sounding. It doesn't sound contrived at all. It doesn't, like a studio album would.
Yeah,
it just sounds like you guys were playing from the heart and.
Boy, I was.
Well, I tell you, that's an interesting story, because I had no idea.
Well, you probably
need to write the book. No, we didn't have. I can honestly say that I can't ever remember fights or anything like that. I've heard stories about. Well, because we have a generation of it's more corporate. Be like if you walked into if you're working for IBM, so you couldn't do it, but. And I think that's might be some of what's wrong, with personality. Because also when you look at the artists, like you had Johnny Paycheck, you weren't going to tell Johnny Paycheck who he was as an artist.
No.
Ray Price the same way, and so we have a lot of. It's just different times, and we all often joke about maybe we need a few more fights, because Eddie Bears tells this funny story that. One of his first calls was he had played on this thing over at Audio Media. Back then, there was a demo house, and he played a boogaloo beat, and he got called out from the bar, and he said, "Hey Eddie, man, you played on that such and such a song, and it's got this beat." And he said, "Man, can you get out here and play drums on it?" And Eddie goes, "Well, who's playing drums on it?" And he said it was, and then he named. I'm going to leave the names out because I don't know exactly who it was, and they were two of the top guys, and it was one of the drums. He said, "Well, he knows how to play that," and he said, "Just get him and the bass player to do it. It's just a boogaloo, you do." And he said they can work it out. And he said, "No, you don't understand. They're out in the parking lot working it out." And it was like, and he said, "Oh, I get it." So he ended up going and doing it because they had to let them both go because that day it was over.